So you found the skeleton. How would you tell people that? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming to watch another Leaving Young Earth creation. This time with Cameron, and of course, you know this is the show where we talk about people's time entering into Young Earth creationism, getting out of it, why they got out of it, and stuff like that. So, rather than me try to introduce him and fail to do him justice, Cameron, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hey guys, I'm Cameron, also known as Time Lord N89. I grew up as a young Earth creationist and eventually found my way out of it through different processes, and I'm sure we'll go over that, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Now, if anyone wants to find you on any social media or anything, do you have a YouTube channel or anything, or what would you like? How would you like people to find you?
I've got an Instagram and I've got a TikTok,
Okay.
and haven't done a whole lot on that, but we're starting to ramp it up with different things. So
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's see. So, how old were you when you became a young Earth creationist? Was this something that you were just raised with, or was there a particular age that you can identify when you became one?
Oh yeah, no, I had no other option for anything else. That was the law of the land.
Okay.
For me.
So that was from basically raised your entire childhood with young Earth creations.
Oh yeah.
And so
my dad was super big on it. Grandfather was super big on it because, of course, both of them were pastors. I come from a line of them.
Oh, okay.
So it was heavily reinforced in my belief.
So, and I suppose with 2 generations of pastors, you were a very regular church attender, or attendee.
Oh,
attendee,
yeah.
Okay.
Anytime there was an opportunity to reinforce those beliefs, it was done.
Okay. So, were there any particular creationists, organizations, or individual, like creationist writers or things, or even video producers or anything, who were featured heavily in the sort of young Earth creationist educational materials you were given?
Yeah. So I grew up on Kent Hovind. There was other Answers in Genesis stuff that they had gotten. There's a anti-evolutionist that I'm very familiar with, Dr. Charles Jackson, who is a big reinforcer of those beliefs, especially later on. Because I believed young Earth creationism.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. That was the bandmate there.
No worries.
But yeah, so it was heavily influenced with a lot of the Ken Ham, a lot of your headliners.
Okay.
That was easy to get information from.
Right. Yeah. I will give them this. They are definitely good at disseminating their ideas. They have slick PR. And now Dr. Jackson, he's the star of the upcoming creationist sci-fi movie by Creation Ministries International, isn't he?
Yes, and actually, I'll give him credit. The graphics look amazing.
They do, actually. Yeah, they look like they actually spent money on the CGI. I was looking at it and I was like, okay, yeah, because I judge CGI by how long would it take me to do it. And the longer it would take me to make it look like that, the better I think it is normally. And so that would be a pretty big project for me. So,
well, and it's a great example, I think, of how much they have to whenever you're dealing with young Earth creationism, they have to deal with like mega super evolution in a short amount of time and stuff. And so I kind of think it's self-defeating, but I also see it being really dangerous because it is so appealing and it is such good graphics too as well.
So, what was your? Oh, and by the way, for when it comes to questions, we will have a Q&A section later, but I am not currently jotting down questions. The Q&A session will be at least a half an hour, and super chats will jump to the head of the queue. Otherwise, it'll just be sort of in order as I see the questions. So, yeah, your best bet is to hold on to your questions until we actually start Q&A, or put them in a super chat because I can check those as a separate entry. So there you go. Let's see. So I just lost my train of thought about creationism. Right. So
we were just talking about the upcoming hot show.
Oh yeah, with Dr. Jackson. So, I actually have not found too many people who had Jackson as one of their big influences as a young Earth creationist. He seems to mostly have been a background figure for most people. So it's interesting that he was a fairly big one for you. So what were some of the things that he was talking about that you found particularly compelling?
Well, of course, after left Christian school, I went to the Christian Bible College, Hillsdale, over in Oklahoma.
Hmm.
He was the biology teacher there, and he also did extra Bible studies and whatnot after class that you could go to, and reinforce the beliefs that were being taught to you.
Right.
And he would also do kind of his special, like an anti-evolutionist type of philosophy with it as well.
Okay.
So he was really good at like mixing in a lot of the truths and a lot of the lies and or misinformation. Um, I genuinely think that he's definitely one of those guys that's not one of those. He's not a grifter, I would say.
So you
But
think he genuinely believes
oh,
his stuff? Okay. Well, that is interesting because there is always a question that I have, especially with the well-educated and to some extent professional creationists. And I have trouble believing that very many of them are actually honest because I have trouble. Anyone who is as well educated as Dr. Jackson is should know all the reasons why young Earth creationism is nonsense. He must know them. But I mean, maybe he's just really good at dealing with cognitive dissonance and partitioning, certain sections of knowledge off. Because
well, it could also
he
be
has
a
to know.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, could also be one of those things where he's had his mind in such a train of thought for so long that he automatically leads the evidence to where it needs to go versus following it
Yeah.
like what most of your well renowned scientists will do.
Okay. So you went through and got at least an undergrad degree at a young Earth creationist school, right?
Well, actually, I ended up leaving.
Oh, okay. So you didn't
I
actually finish the degree.
No, I ended up not finishing it. I went into the ministry side of it after a while. I went entered with psychology, and then I switched to ministry. And then about halfway through that, I was just getting offers to go preach, and so I just went ahead and just left school and started doing that. It wasn't until I went back to school. Of course, I'm still working on it right now, but I had to spend like 7 grand in remedial to catch myself up in the different sciences that I had missed out on.
Yeah, that's rough. So,
Yeah.
all right. So now you've grown up, gone through. Did you go to a Christian or, well, specifically YEC high school? Because I know a lot of people go to Christian high schools that are not creationist high schools.
Right. So YEC was heavily enforced at the high school I went to. Of course,
Okay.
I went there from junior high through high school. I when I came home and asked my parents about Neanderthal, and I was immediately removed from public school and put into private.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, the reason I specify creationist is because, like I went to a Catholic high school, which is a Christian high school, but evolution was the thing they taught you about in biology class, right? Like there was no like, oh, we're
Right.
gonna pretend it didn't happen. So I do find sometimes there's a confusion. Not every private Christian school is going to teach you bad science. So
Yeah, mine was terrible about science. Like biology class, it was literally they gave you the answers. I mean, they were not concerned about the actual education part. The
okay.
Bible classes, however, those were the ones that you took the longest amount of time in.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I have found that when it comes to like math, English, and I mean, depending on how much you value it, but Bible things, a lot of private Christian schools actually do pretty well with teaching people to read and do math, and then I mean,
oh, I'm sure they're out there. Yeah,
yeah.
like, the
So,
one in particular me wasn't.
so you left the degree program because you were getting offers to go preach, presumably paid preaching work.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You fill
okay.
in, $200 to $500. So
So you were you essentially a professional preacher at that point?
I would say probably like amateur professional,
Okay, so
like mainly fill in at the time. I had one steady gig as like an assistant youth pastor for a while.
okay,
But I like doing the fill in more.
right.
You get to travel, meet new people.
So I presume for most of this time you were a young Earth creationist. So what is it that
Oh,
first started you on the path of saying, hey, maybe, the Earth is older than 6 to 10,000 years old, and maybe common ancestry does actually explain modern biodiversity, and like, what was the first sort of inkling?
um, I want to say it was I had ventured into the YouTube pipeline. I think I came across a video of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about stars,
Okay.
and I had never really had somebody like break down how stars work and how they actually, function and what they do and how space time works and how light traveling over a certain distance would have to require certain amounts of time. Uh, so that was kind of the first thing that really started kind of cracking the shell a little bit was, we have all these stars out here and, obviously like I grew up while also watching Star Trek. So
Right.
space and Earth being round as a globe was never a non-argument for me. Um, but just so happens our little special planet was the special one that was created like that.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. Um, but it wasn't until like when I got older, I started getting into like watching some Aaron Ra, who does some awesome stuff with disproving the flood. I'm sure you've seen this series on
Yeah,
it.
his how X disproves the or Noah's flood, I believe it was. And an X, you fill in the X, whether it be geology or paleontology or things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's his talk on koalas. He was talking about koalas in one of his videos,
Yes, I
and
remember
how
that.
they with this. Yeah, and to me that just it stuck, and I was like, well, what's an explanation of how that could happen without invoking magic,
Yeah.
basically?
It really is the case that
And I've
Noah's
done it.
flood just requires miracles all the way down. It basically requires just infinite miracles.
Right, and growing up as a pretty in a pretty fundamentalist household, um, once that broke, God's word is inherent in that viewpoint. It was a whole lot easier for me to start deconstructing everything
Right.
and work to getting back in school, doing classes with science, and actually learning real science, which was a way better subject when you're not learning material from like the 60s and 70s and being told that's the best argument currently.
Yeah, it really is the case that creationists, especially the young earth ones, tend to be at least 30 years behind in terms of where science is. They are
Mhm.
arguing against right now, creationists are barely coming to grips with like the science of the 90s. And it's like, guys, you're come on, guys. And I still get people who throw quotes at me from like the 1970s talking about like problems in like stellar formation theories that were problems in the 1970s. I'm like, okay, do you have anything from this century about any potential problems with our theories of stellar formation? It's like, no.
Well,
It's like,
and
oh.
they attack your position without having any grounds for their position.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, yeah.
basically, the flood and well, problems with the flood and things like light travel time for distant stellar objects and astronomy
It
are
was
the
it was basically people providing better explanations of things that I had wrong explanations for.
yeah.
Uh, but I also had to be open to being wrong,
Okay.
and knowing that the reason I was wrong is because I was taught wrong, and now I have an opportunity to learn the correct thing.
Now, I
And,
imagine that this is causing at least a few problems. For one thing, I assume that the churches that are paying you to go teach there are expecting you to not contradict young Earth creationism.
oh well, I mean, I ended up leaving. Stopped. I stopped doing that back in like 2013. So it had been a while, anyways. It had been,
Oh, okay.
but I was a church attendee until about 2017, and that's whenever I pretty much fully deconverted and uh, stopped any kind of young Earth creationist belief. And started really pursuing, the new knowledge that was available to me.
Okay. So you, for a while, I'm just trying to make sure I get this timeline correct in my
Oh,
head.
you're good, man.
So you stopped being active as like a preacher, but were still a regular church attendee before leaving Young Earth Creationism. Okay, and
Yeah.
so um, Now, I imagine that having grown up with this and lived a significant portion of your adult life as a young Earth creationist, that most of your friends, presumably, essentially all of your family, were all deeply connected with church groups that were pretty strongly young Earth creationist. So when you stopped believing this, did this disrupt a lot of those relationships? And was it tough?
Oh yeah.
Did you hide it for a while?
So I've just never been one to hide. And I know for some people, like, if you're in a position where you're relying upon somebody for housing or food or anything like that, like I get, hiding it and stuff.
Yeah.
Just for me, I'm just an open person. I would have told on myself without even realizing it had I just not went ahead and been open about it.
Okay.
But yeah, no, there was a lot of people, and it hurt. Losing a lot of people that you consider to be friends, that basically just tell you, hey, I can't talk to you no more. If you're not going to believe the same things that we do, then we don't want to have a relationship with you. It's lots of there's family that I just don't talk to anymore.
Yeah.
But now, luckily, my parents, they're the type that think this is like a phase that's been going on now for like 6 years. So, and I guess if that's what it takes for them to deal with it, then fine.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like Pandora's box on it. I mean, once you open it, it's open.
Yeah,
But I definitely do get treated different whenever it comes to those groups, even the ones that will still hang out with you. You can definitely tell there's a difference in how I had been treated versus how it's now.
Yeah. Now, was there a period during which, because you said that you fully deconverted, so I assume that means that you don't consider yourself a Christian anymore.
Oh no, I go with the apostate label. It's because it's what I am. I was a believer and no longer am.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm pretty open about that.
So, was there a period between realizing young Earth creationism wasn't true and leaving Christianity? Was there a period where you were non-YEC Christian? Was that any significant?
So for me, YEC was completely tied into my faith. And it's my belief on that. Because in my eyes, if Adam was never created, then Adam and Eve, they were not the two humans that hold the original sin. And so without original sin, there was no need for Jesus to come back and die on the cross.
Okay.
So for me, whenever one collapsed, the rest collapsed, which I've found, talking to other former young Earth creationists that were raised in strict households that are no longer believers, that it was kind of similar. That whenever, with that hardline belief, once that house of cards, a part of it falls, it all goes.
Yeah, that is one of the interesting things I find, is that they're not everyone who ends up leaving young Earth creationism ends up leaving Christianity, but I find that the groups that tie their theology more intently into the literal story of Adam and Eve and the sort of very juridical analogy for Christian theology have a harder time holding on to members after they leave creationism than other forms of Christianity do. Like, it's not very common that you'll find, say, because you'll find creationists in most flavors of Christianity, even the ones that aren't officially, you have to be a creationist to belong. So like it's fairly unusual to find say an Eastern Orthodox person or an Anglican or something, which those groups don't tend to have that same kind of focus, who at one point was a creationist, stops being one, and then thinks that kind of collapses the rest of the theology. So I really do think that the kind of Ken Ham theology is really self-defeating, because you're tying so much of your ideas into something that we know just cannot actually be the case. And then when people figure out that, oh, hey, this is all nonsense, well, bye. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of creationist stuff has become very, very inward-facing. Like, if you look at, say, a lot of the stuff being put out by Answers in Genesis or Creation Ministries International and things like that, they're very focused on getting Christians, in particular, to believe in young Earth creationism, because they know that they're not going to be getting very many other people. And so, yeah, it's very strange. And I do think that overall young Earth creationism has I think it's made more non-Christians out of Christians than it has made Christians out of non-Christians. Let's just say that. It's a net drain on Christianity, I think. So one of the things I always tell people is like, hey, if you're a Christian and you care about the long-term survival of Christianity, you should ditch young Earth creationism as quickly as possible. That should not be.
As somebody who studied it like thoroughly enough to like preach and teach it or whatever. I mean, I could fix it if they'd let me. They're just not going to be happy with some of the changes.
Yeah. So so after you.
Yeah, no, I've got friends that are Christians that still believe in evolution. I mean,
yeah,
but they weren't. It wasn't pushed on them like it was whenever I was.
Exactly. Yeah, I do think that it's the degree to which that becomes a central part of the religion is the degree to which that religion is not going to stick around once people get even a small amount of education about science. Because one of the problems with the young Earth creationism is that it's hard to find an area of science that it doesn't contradict in fundamental ways. Like,
right,
huge, and almost all the science.
It wasn't a little bit. It was just a little bit of science. That's all it took.
Yep.
Like I didn't go get my a master's in paleontology or anything like that. Like I was studying psychology first, and before I went to ministry. But then I went to I was studying political science and doing some science courses through it, and yeah, it's just little things.
Yeah.
Like, and that's looking back, I can see why so much of my education was altered into a certain narrow point of view in order to reinforce the fundamentalist beliefs that I held.
Yeah. So, after you started getting that first little inkling with, you're getting this distant starlight and the problems with Noah's flood, did you then go in and look further into various aspects of science and see whether or not other aspects of young Earth creationism held up, or did it sort of just kind of crumble at that point?
So I actually went through a little bit of like a phase of not really concentrating too much on the creationist aspect of it because I was having a religious crisis at the point. So with that identity crumbled, I immediately started grasping at straws. Like I got into Norse paganism for a little while. And whenever that didn't make any sense, then I was like, well, let's go older. So I started like looking at Egypt stuff. And then eventually I just looked at myself and I'm like, man, just accept that, they're not good arguments. They don't have good reasons.
Okay.
And so after that point, I fully accepted the fact that, I was an atheist. That was kind of a scary little period there for like the first like week or two when you're like, so when we die, do I actually just die? And once you get out of that programming, it gets a whole lot better though.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what were some of the, if any, what were some of the things that before you stopped being a young Earth creationist you found as particularly compelling? What were, like, let's say you set your mind back some 8 or 9 years ago and someone says, oh, young Earth creationism, that's nonsense. What would be your comeback to be like, oh, no, see, here, look, this is how we can tell that young Earth creationism is true?
Well, there was never really any, like, because, you got to reference back to the Bible, basically. But it was always usually, we were trained to attack the opposite position rather than to defend our own.
Okay.
I would immediately go to, well, what do you believe? Evolution? So, like, if that's true, like, we still got monkeys at the zoo.
Ooh. Why are there still monkeys? That's bad, man.
Oh, yeah, the monkey own, man. The monkey own. Or, hey, if you set off a bunch of TNT in a junkyard, are you going to make a 747? And then these were, it was just the talking point.
That's like some vintage.
It's like, he shut down.
That is some vintage 70s and 80s creationism, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's nice.
The sect of Christianity I came out of needs to they got to work on modernizing.
They got to modernize their YEC. Their YEC is like 60 years behind instead of only 30 years behind.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's still negotiated whether or not pianos should be in those churches, or a bass guitar or a regular guitar.
No, acapella, all acapella. Just do it.
Yeah, hot topics.
Well, I mean, hey, look, it's just cheaper.
I mean, it really does save the church some money. I mean, you don't got to worry about having someone come and like tune the piano and whatnot.
Yeah, no piano tuning, no guitar tuning,
You don't
no
have to pay for anybody to do it.
you don't have to get any amps or pedals or any of that stuff. You just have people sing.
Yeah, no, man. I like at least a good bass line going.
Well, I was in a choir, so maybe I'm a little bit biased.
Well, see, I play ska reggae, man, so
So
I love that bop stuff,
you got that opposite bias then. So
Yeah, some Sublime stuff like that.
Okay, so did you ever look into sort of the? So there's sort of like a few different tiers I find of creationist output. There's the really low level stuff that is basically just like public addresses and like this stuff that's like made for kids material and things like that. But then there are some still for lay audiences, but more technical works, like books that they're aimed at adult audiences. Like, sorry. So things like Replacing Darwin or Behe's Black Box or things like that. Did you ever read any of that sort of level of the creationist output, the sort of it's kind of technical but still for lay people?
So that I really didn't get into a whole lot of that until
Okay.
whenever I was later on in life, at like near junior year high school type of stuff that I really started reading into actual like materials by like Ken Ham stuff. He was kind of my go-to on a lot of that stuff. Answers in Genesis. I liked the fact that this is a young Earth creationist organization that also tells people don't use these bad arguments and stuff like the moon dust argument that drives them crazy that people use.
Yeah, actually, I do actually appreciate that AIG is like, hey, look, these arguments are so bad we don't think you should use them. And it's like, thanks, AIG, because now I can just point to you when people bring it up and be like, even AIG knows this is nonsense. You should please stop.
But at the same time, it helped reinforce what the believableness of what they were saying and said.
Yeah, that is a double-edged sword.
I remember watching. Oh,
I was just gonna, it is a double-edged sword because it makes them seem more reasonable. So.
Yeah, well, and it's like I remember watching. I was in college watching Bill Nye and Ken Ham. I thought Bill Nye got owned.
No, that's interesting. Now I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Bill Nye, I think overall did fairly well, but I think that when he started to touch on things like the textual history of the Bible, it fell apart. And I'm curious. So I'm sure you noticed that too. Like it's clear that even a non-believing scholar of the Bible and the Bible's textual history and whatnot would say that Bill Nye doesn't know anything about that subject.
Right. Well, it's just like the same thing with whenever Dawkins talks about it being a remarkably written book and whatever, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's true, but that's because the people who wrote this were reading what's the one that everybody read that reads Greek?
The Septuagint?
No, it's the not the Odyssey, is it? No, I can't remember it. But yeah, no, I find little value in that stuff anymore.
Well, so the reason I ask is because since you were watching that as a creationist and a Christian, did you find that section of his debate where he started saying things that were just kind of weird and not really the case about the Bible affected your opinion of how he did in the debate overall?
Oh, okay. No. As a younger creationist looking back at it, no, it was definitely. I saw it as a way to distract from the subject because he was losing.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I watched it and I was definitely not a young Earth creationist, and but that was the one problem I had with Bill Nye's debate performance, and I was worried that it might come across to his audience who might know less about the science than he does, but more about the Bible, because it seems like it would be hard to know less about the Bible.
I think some people feel like they have to, like, I think some people like Nye think that they have to try to entertain with the through the Bible in order to be able to reach certain people with that stuff.
Yeah.
And no, don't mix it. Just teach what it is.
Yeah.
And eventually you're just going to get hit with it so many times that you're going to actually stop and take a look at it.
And I will say this.
And it goes into a person too. I mean, if you're an honest person and want to only believe in things that are true, then that's going to fall on you.
Yeah. And I'll also offer this out as advice to anyone. If you want to have a discussion about the Bible and you want to get into things like the textual history of the Bible, you need to actually know a thing or two about it. And going to like r/atheism isn't going to help you with that. So please actually look into actual scholarship about these things before you decide to go off on it. That's one of the reasons why I did a atheist myths episode about the Council of Nicaea. Because how many times have you heard someone who got their education from someplace like Reddit say, "Oh, the Bible was created at the Council of Nicaea," and it's like, no, it wasn't. Not even a little bit.
There were councils, but then there was also other influences that eventually formed even the 1611 part versus even like what we have now.
Yeah, it's a fairly complicated story, and very little of it, actually none of it really, involves the First Council of Nicaea.
No,
it's
so that's wasn't it like 3 or 4 total? I think, if I remember right.
So, I mean, if you're saying how many councils were there total, I don't know that anyone has compiled an exhaustive list, but there are 7 that are universally held by the Catholic and Orthodox churches, which together make up a huge proportion of Christians, as being held in common between them. And a lot of the more traditional Protestant groups, like the mainline Protestant groups, like the mainline Presbyterians and Lutherans, also accept those same 7 councils as being more or less authoritative.
Oh, okay. See, I mean, yeah, and that's another thing too. You were raised Catholic. See, and back in the day,
no, I was not raised Catholic. I did go to a Catholic high school. No, I was raised in a non-denominational evangelical church that was a YEC church. That's why I was a young Earth creationist. But
and then you went to a Catholic school.
So I went to a Catholic school. There was not a Protestant school nearby, and it had a much better academic rating basically than the local public schools. Like they had they had much higher SAT scores and college acceptance rates and stuff than the local public schools. So that's why my parents sent me there.
But back in the day, man, I would have said, Catholics, I would have counted them as Christians back in the day.
Well, I mean, I don't think that most of the people at my church would have said that. Some of them definitely would have. It was one of those areas where I think there was a diversity of opinion at the church that I was going to as to whether or not Catholics counted as Christian. So.
Oh, I mean, yeah, and your view is going to change for every person you talk to in the pews. I mean, no, they try to enforce a universal belief, and that's why, especially in the sect of Christianity that I'm from, why young Earth creationism is so reinforced, because it has to fall in line with the dogma of the sect.
Yeah. All right, so I think what I'd like to ask now is, what do you think about the professional creationists and creationist organizations that you were a fan of, now that you no longer essentially believe the things that they're saying? Like, what do you think of Ken Ham and AIG, or what do you think of CMI and Kent Hovind and things like that, or even Dr. Jackson?
That they're dangerous and they need to be countered anytime it can be done. That it's one thing to respect a belief or whatever, It's a whole nother thing to be perpetuating information that we know is false and that is damaging, and that, for me, example, costs you money and time in college whenever you actually do decide to go do a real subject and stuff. Of course, some people might argue about political science being an actual subject, but coming out of ministry courses where it was just, pretty much over text and scripture, actually having to do real biology is what convinced me to leave young Earth creationism.
Yeah.
Not appealing to my young Earth creationist side. You were going nowhere with that. I had to be hit with actual information, and I think we, especially former believers or former young Earth creationists, have a special view of what happens through that lens. Um, and like I said, we should just be countering them. It's causes more damage than a lot of people think.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, those
and
guys just being able to let run free and do whatever is it's not a good thing.
yeah. Actually, I remember I had a conversation with a someone who was in the process of leaving Young Earth Creationism, and I don't want to say too much because this wasn't a public conversation. But this person was not young, and he had recently enrolled in a PhD program at a Baptist seminary, and he was during the conversation realizing that creationism is just there really isn't anything to it, and so I mean, his big thing was like, well, now what do I do? I've got I've got degrees from seminaries, and I'm currently enrolled in one right now to get a PhD, and like, what do you do with that? And it's like, I mean, it's a tough question because to some extent, some of that stuff that your degrees are in, you just no longer you realize that a lot of that just isn't true. So, do you lie to keep
Oh
whatever
yeah,
job you have? Do you? I mean, it's not an easy question, and
there
it's
is an
it's
organization out there for people like that though.
there
It's
is.
the Clarity Project. The Clarity Project.
Yep,
Good people.
yep. I know some people who've been associated with the clergy project. So, because it's not easy to figure out what you're going to do if you are a member of the clergy and you realize that you no longer believe the things that you used to, whether it be because you're changing your religion to another one or because you're leaving religion altogether. And I think it's important to have that, not just for the clergy themselves, but also for the people who those clergy would otherwise be serving, because I don't think it's fair to them to have their leader be someone who is basically just doing it hypocritically just because he needs to continue to have a paycheck. And so
Right.
I think in both ends, it's a good idea to have a project like that because, yeah, I mean, you're going to rightfully feel betrayed if it turns out that, oh, your priest or pastor or whatever was actually an atheist for the past 5 years. Like, come on.
Right. Yeah,
So,
and as the preacher, especially if you've got kids, like I've got a son now, and I've even joked with the wife before. Whenever I've been unemployed or between jobs, I'm like, oh, all I got to do is snap my fingers, and I could go to another church. Probably not now after saying that, but I told her I'm like we could do it, and she's like, well, yeah, but first off, you could be dishonest, and then secondly, you got a son now, and you don't want him around that stuff. And that's true. Like. And I'm a monster in my family because I'm not teaching them anything about young Earth creationism until after we actually teach them the science first.
yeah,
Like I'm not. That's not like I'm scared of him being introduced to it as much as it's just not necessary at this point.
yeah.
And yeah, so I'm told I'm doing the same thing that my parents did to me to him.
So, I actually have a specific question about Dr. Jackson, who was your professor, right?
Yes.
So, I think that's interesting because it's one of the few. This is one of the very few times that I've had someone on who's had significant, like, face-to-face contact with anyone I would consider to be a professional creationist. We had a guy who used to work for Ken Ham, but Ken Ham isn't exactly the most approachable individual to his employees, so there was very little actual interaction there. So if, like, let's say you were in the room with Dr. Jackson again, and for some reason you had his attention, and you had his ear for a little bit, what would you like to tell him about things that you've learned that, like, why would you teach, like, how would you like to, like, confront the things that he taught you, which you now know can't actually be true? So what would you say to him?
Well, I mean, I've actually had this conversation. It
Oh, okay.
was over Facebook messaging basically, and it it pretty much went nowhere. I made my peace with it, and he tried making a comeback, didn't really. But it was basically like, why, after he left the college and then started teaching in, I think it's like in the Carolinas or Virginia or something like that. Now teaching in at a high school. Uh, and I was like, like, even if you're doing public classes and stuff like that, like, are you actually, what are you teaching with that stuff? And he said that he's not going to teach anything that interferes with the ability to gain followers for Christ.
What? Okay. I could see
So
that
I mean,
meaning more
it's
than
pretty
one
much
thing. What does that actually mean for him?
so. In other words, the concerns that I had and the arguments that I brought up to him weren't as concerning as much as him and his ministry were.
Okay.
So, I think he honestly believes this stuff, but I also think that there's a lot of like dishonest reinforcement that goes into this in order for he makes decent money from it. So, I mean, all these guys do.
Well, now he's a movie star too.
Well, yeah. Oh, dude. Now and he always has fashioned himself after a Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, is
Um,
that why he has the sort of Jeff Goldblum look to him?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And he was very big into like we would go do individual Bible studies after school. Like every Thursday, we'd go out to his place. That's where we'd get extra anti-evolutionist reinforcement brought in on us.
Mm-hmm.
And there was only like a group of like 8 to 10 people that would show up out there and have direct interaction with him. And we'd go over some like answers in Genesis stuff. We went over Kent Hovind's "Why Evolution is Stupid." Um,
Oh wait, his 100 Reasons video.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so wait, Jackson was showing these things to you as reinforcement to your whole.
Oh yeah, it was. We were getting the whole kind of circle pot going into it.
That's
It was just constantly being fed that material.
see, that's a little bit on the surprising side to me because I generally think of Kent Hovind as being significantly lower tier than most of the rest of them. It's sort of like Carl Baugh and Kent Hovind. I think of as sort of like the butt of the joke, even among creationists. But
To a
it's
degree, he definitely referenced Ham more than Hovind. But
but the fact that his 100 Reasons Why Evolution is So Stupid was something that was positively being circulated there is uh
oh yeah,
that's I'll be honest, that's a level of just terrible argumentation that I'm even surprised that happened. I actually did think a slightly bit higher of Dr. Jackson until you told me that, and I'm just like, oh wow, and that was only a few years ago, right? Like what, 6, 7 years ago?
well, yeah, and I mean, it was about that time too. Like right a little after that's whenever I sent him the message of the koalas and no positive answer and like and then I asked, and you guys even went over this with your Kevin Fett, the water, salt water and fresh water, and
Oh yeah.
his explanation was the freshwater vortexes uh, that were protecting freshwater fish during the flood.
Oh well, that's convenient, isn't it?
Dude, very convenient, very convenient. But when you're in those circles and you've been raised with that, you don't sit there and go, "What?"
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
not until you actually start, like it would have killed all like salt sensitive plants. It would have, like
yeah. Well, actually,
there's so many.
just the other day, I saw someone on Facebook saying, "Oh, plants and trees weren't targeted by the flood," and I said, "Okay, that's great. Put some plants and trees underwater for a year. Come back and let me know how it goes, because I can tell you what won't happen, which is that they'll be fine. That won't
Well,
be what
just
happens."
tell them they're not allowed to invoke magic. I mean, that takes a lot of the fire out if you're not allowed to invoke magic. I mean, like I was totally cool with the idea of God just being snapping his fingers and all the plants grow back, or them not being harmed because they're protected, but only humans and animals, which is weird. Why wouldn't you just go ahead and protect the animals too and just kill off the humans?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and whenever you're in, like I said, when you're in there and you got the glasses on you, the young Earth creationist glasses, it makes a whole lot more sense. I can see why these guys try to reinforce it so much because it guarantees that you're going to have a certain amount of believers and a certain amount of dedicated people
Yeah.
to that cause, as long as you can get them young too.
It is one of those things where it's like we said before, it takes so little science to completely destroy young Earth creationism that you really do have to do a lot of reinforcing, and it really does help if you start off young. That's one of the reasons why it doesn't. It's not that it never happens, but it's much more unusual for an adult to become a young Earth creationist than the other way around. There's a reason why, as far as I know of,
Oh yeah.
no one has ever bothered to do a leaving evolutionism show where we talk to
I mean,
former.
you had an evolutionist, a Darwinist with some like, hey, why do we still got monkeys? It usually wins, man. It usually works. I don't know why it doesn't work for some people.
Well, hey, you know what? If there's any creationists out here watching, why don't you guys set up a leaving evolutionism show? See if you can get guests on for that. I would like to know. Yeah, I would like to know how many, especially adults, have actually managed to go from accepting science to believing weird, crazy things that make very little sense at all. That would be interesting to me. So
I bet if you do that, what you'll find is they accepted information on both ends for the wrong reason.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that's interesting is I do know of some cases of even some fairly intelligent people who have become creationists, but none of them started off as, accepting science. I've started to stop saying mainstream science because it's just science. Young Earth creationism isn't. It isn't science. It's not science in the same way that flat Earth isn't geography.
Young Earth creationism is pseudoscience.
Right. So I do know some people who have stopped, accepting science and then started to become creationists, but it was always after a conversion to Christianity and not a conversion to Christianity that came after they realized that the Earth was young and evolution was nonsense. So I would be very interested to see if there's anyone out there who has looked at the evidence and then before they came to any religious conclusions, concluded that evolution was nonsense, the Earth was young, and that there was a global flood. And then later said, oh, hey, that just happens to line up with the Bible. I guess I'll just believe that too. That would be a very interesting person to find.
I would say it would definitely, later in life, have to go the other way. It's if you hit some random person that has like just a high school like education with that hasn't been exposed to it before, you're probably not going to get any bites.
Yeah.
You got to start off with that religious aspect and then pull them into it, because we all know you can be religious, you can be completely sound with like it's evolution and have an understanding of that and how you want to twist your theology into that to make it work for you. Cool.
Yep. Well, hey, I mean,
yeah, mine is one and the same.
One of my most recent guests was Maddie from Science Side Up, and Maddie is a believing Christian, and she was on here to dunk on Genesis apologetics with me. So it is definitely the case. It is not a thing that as evolution doesn't require you to stop believing in God. It's kind of a weird idea that people think it does. And of course, it also doesn't require you to believe in God. It's sort of like gravity or the germ theory of disease. It works either way, whether or not there's a God. So it's kind of neutral to that proposition, which is one of the reasons why I don't have the sort of philosophical debates about whether God exists on the channel, because I'm here to talk about the science, and the science doesn't give us answers to that question. So I'm not here to talk about that part.
Right, and I like that about your channel. It's that it's pretty neutral, and just like I knew coming on here that there's definitely a different philosophy between someone who wants to be a believer in Christianity and then somebody who's just a full blown young Earth creationist. Nothing else is acceptable.
Well, and I mean,
in years type of person. Even
on leaving young Earth creationism, I've had people as guests who were former and current Christians. Like a number of the people I've had on to talk about leaving Earth creationism are in fact Christians, and a number of them aren't. So we've had a mix here, and I'm not here to talk about like you want to do deconversion stories completely, and that's what you want to focus on is just leaving religion. There are other platforms for it. I'm here to talk primarily about young Earth creationism. Now, in many cases, that can involve a deconversion story, which is fine. But yeah, that's one of the things. Is like this is it's a matter of science. It's not a matter of your metaphysical beliefs, except where they touch on reliability of science. It's not a matter of your theology, again, except where it might touch on science. So I think,
and if my beliefs hadn't been so hardline and it wasn't so reinforced whenever I left young Earth creationism, there's a good chance that I could have also not went that path that I did go, but instead also retained theism.
Yeah.
It kind of just doomed itself in, like you said before. It's a self-defeating position.
Yeah. So I have one more big question, and then we're going to start opening it up to audience questions. So if you're in the audience, and I know that we had some questions early on, but sorry, I'm not going to scroll back up to find them. Sorry, guys.
Just repeat them.
So yeah, you're going to have to retype them. And again, of course, super chats do go to the top of the line, and I don't have to scroll up for those because those actually come in a separate window that I can check separately, which is convenient. So. But the last big question I had for you is, did you find it terribly difficult to reestablish a support network after leaving Young Earth Creationism and Christianity as a whole?
For a while at first.
Yeah.
Luckily, like my wife, I've been with her since I was a Young Earth Creationist. She was pretty much raised outside of her household, wasn't that big into any kind of like churchy or Young Earth Creationist or anything like that. So she got to actually enjoy her full education.
Okay.
So at one point though, oh shoot, what am I getting with this? What was the question?
How difficult was it to
establishing network?
Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever I ended up leaving Young Earth Creationism, she didn't really care either way. So that was never an effective thing.
Okay.
But I had close friends from childhood that did stop talking to me, and I mean, most of my friends are 3 or 4 years old now. Like as far as known association,
right? The,
like
the friendship is that long. They're not small children. Got it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've still got like 1 or 2 friends that are ministers that I still talk to that I work with on helping them, get people to go talk to like recovering from religion out of like the more harder stuff.
Yeah.
Which is also a great organization if you guys ever want people to talk to you about that kind of stuff. But for the most part, yeah, I really had to establish a new network.
Okay.
Nobody in my circle's really over 4 years, except for maybe like 1 or 2 people.
Yeah, that's rough, but I'm glad that you were able to actually reestablish that because, I do want to let people know that when you do things like this, that can cause you to lose your circle of your support circle, which can be a wide variety of things, right? Like changing your religion can do it. Changing your belief in something like the age of the Earth can do it. People have similar troubles when they're doing things like if you're in like the LGBT community and you come out and you're in a particularly religiously conservative family, that can cause similar problems like that. And so I do like to let people know that there is life after that. It will suck for a while, but you will get new people around you who will support you, and yeah. So, but let's see.
I mean, one thing I did learn from it, I mean, that was a positive experience, is that to not beat yourself up if somebody doesn't want to accept you because of something that you believe. Just screw them then. Like, there are plenty of other people. There's 7.4 billion people on the planet right now. You can find another network.
You're going to get along with some of those people out there. All right, so
even if you got to move somewhere, cool.
From Beethoven,
they're out there.
From Beethoven, no relation. What is your favorite? Or sorry, who is your favorite Time Lord?
My favorite Time Lord is David Tennant.
Ah, but is the Doctor really a Time Lord? Because apparently that's not the case anymore, which kind of annoys me.
I stopped watching after Peter Capaldi.
Fair enough. I kind of did too. Not because
not that I'm anti-new, but it's just I really started watching a lot of Star Trek instead.
So I usually, when a new Doctor takes over, especially when there's a new showrunner, I like to take a break for a little bit and then see if it's any good, because it can vary so wildly. And everything I heard about like the new plots, and I was like, that doesn't sound interesting at all, or I actively dislike this. So I just didn't bother to keep up.
David Tennant #1, Matt Smith #2.
Okay.
I mean, I got it back to back, but yeah.
TD Lane asks what your favorite dinosaur is.
Oh, favorite dinosaur. That's hard. I would definitely have to say like maybe a velociraptor.
Okay.
Especially now that I know that they had feathers and stuff. That's way cooler.
I was about to ask, is it? Do you like the Jurassic Park monster, or do you like the actual dinosaur? Because they're very different.
No, the actual one's even cooler.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. So this is from an intrigued feline, and she asks, "Does it make the new connections that much more valuable now that you've had to establish them after?" And this is me adding a little bit, like to try and contextualize a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, so now that you've gone through this whole thing where you had to lose a huge part of your support network, and do you value the new connections that you have more because they're, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. One thing that I learned going through that is the fact that many of those people were just friends with me because we were in the same circles religiously. And, it's, it also teaches you too that if that's what it comes to and that's the only like reason that we're cool and stuff, then I don't want to be around you anyways.
Yeah.
Which means it makes the new connections that I've made with other people who don't have that kind of similar background and don't have a shared background, but yet we end up clicking and becoming friends. I mean, my best friend I've only had for like 2.5 years now,
Okay.
and I consider him my best friend. So, I mean, yeah.
All right. And we have from JS a question. Now, this is a question that I'm going to ask, but because it is a question about your personal religious history that doesn't relate directly to Earth creations, you can feel free to answer or not.
Okay.
JS says, "You practice Norse and Egyptian paganism. Which gods did you follow?" And then JS lists a large list of both Norse and Egyptian deities, but I don't feel like reading the whole list, frankly.
So, I was really into like Loki. I liked at the time I was selling cars, so it kind of flowed. I was like, god of trickery, and I'm a car salesman, and I'm tricky.
Very open about what that takes, huh?
Oh, dude, we could have a full-on interview about the car business. It would blow your mind. And then as far as Egyptian, it was, kind of mainline Osiris, but and Osiris and Horus. It was because it fell in line with my previous theology more, the whole sacrificial god that offers eternal life.
Okay.
The battle between the good and evil that go on that. But I mean, I even glimpsed over at like Greek mythology. But that the problem with Greek mythology is it's so isolated to Greece.
Yeah.
Because it was more of a cultural thing rather than an actual like super religious aspect, like it came out of the Abrahamic faiths. That it was just whatever. Whenever they were like, oh, there's no gods up there.
Now,
So
Vesta Freya asks what you think about Tom Baker as the Doctor.
Tom Baker is Tom Baker, remembering Jelly Bean, right?
Well, the gummy babies, but yes.
The gummy bear doctor, yes. So I never got to
or Jelly
experience
Baby.
a lot of the older Doctor stuff, just because it was a little bit harder to find, especially whenever I was watching a lot of Doctor Who. I think now they have like half the first season on available.
I'm not sure exactly what's available. It's one of those things where if you want to watch significant amounts of classic Who, it's hard to do it without pirating.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, I definitely like the connection that like David Tennant's married to his daughter. That's cool.
that is the thing. So in case anyone doesn't know what's happening, David Tennant isn't actually married to his daughter, but the woman who played the Doctor's daughter, who was like a weird clone thing, although why whatever, it doesn't matter. Somehow the Doctor was quote unquote cloned, and this blonde woman steps out of the cloning chamber or whatever, and that was his quote unquote daughter, but the actress playing her is actually David Tennant's wife.
Yeah.
So.
Oh wait, I thought she was Tom Baker's daughter.
Oh, maybe it was. Well, she was also the daughter of someone else who I think played the Doctor, which was Here's the thing: at any given time, there's never more than like 24 actors in all of the United Kingdom. So there's going to be a lot of connections between them.
Hey, but they put out good actors though. I'll give them that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, TikTok asks what you think about Hugh Laurie as the Doctor. Oh wait.
I don't know.
Actually, I think Hugh Laurie could do it. It could be a pretty good Doctor if they wanted to have a Hugh Laurie Doctor.
Yes, but we would definitely have to see some similar acting styles to some certain past characters. I think that would flow well.
Okay.
But If I had to pick a doctor right now, though, I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Clearly, Gates McFadden.
Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum.
There you go. John Wick. Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves, the first American actor to play the Doctor.
Yes, there you go.
Oh no! Somehow I have an alarm set. I shouldn't have that. Whatever.
Yeah, Cyberman better watch out. That's all I got to say on that.
All right. So, let's see. I'm gonna make sure that I didn't miss any of these questions. I don't think I've missed any yet. So, all right. So, let's see. Now, do you currently do anything involving like any kind of like discussing topics about creation, evolution, science, and stuff, or is that no longer really a part of your, like a big part of your life, and it's just sort of a background thing?
So it had been for a while, but it's kind of been revamped, especially with just recently having a kid.
Yeah.
There's been kind of a renewed focus in it because there for a while it just had become background galactic noise to me. It was, yeah, you believe what you believe. I'm not really too concerned with it. Then it started becoming more of a concern. Then it started about being, I blame some of that on my ADHD. But yeah, no, it's becoming more of a thing though. So definitely, if you want to check out my TikTok, I've been kind of slow on it, but I'm planning on doing a whole lot more with it.
Well, make sure you send me a link to that, and I will make sure that it gets into the description of this video so that people can check this out. So,
fair warning, I did show for Biden during the whole thing. I do not think he is the answer or the best case scenario. Just so we're clear on that.
Well, I don't usually give my political takes, but I don't tend to give political takes. But I will say this. If you name a president, chances are that I don't like them for some reason or another. And I can usually give you a pretty good reason why I don't like that person.
Roosevelt.
Well, like I said, we're not going to actually get into the whole hot takes. But if perhaps some other time, maybe in private, you want to have my hot take on a given president, you can ask me. But
hell yeah, man.
But yeah, generally speaking, I can find a pretty good reason. Now, I will say this, though. William Henry Harrison, I got no complaints.
William Henry Harrison. Isn't he the one who died from pneumonia?
2 months in, yep.
Yeah!
He gave an inauguration speech, immediately fell ill, and that's all he ever did.
Yeah, then they even made a fun of that on what is it, Parks and Recs. They even made fun of that.
They did, yep. Oh, we have $10 from Scott Duke. Thank you very much for the super chat, Scott. And it says, keep up the good work. A show devoted to the car dealership business is a good idea. Well, maybe we should set up something about how shady is the car selling business. My guess is it's going to be extremely shady. Is that accurate?
I mean, I could probably, I might get black bagged or something like that during the middle of it. But I'm willing to if that's something that you want to do.
Well, I might put it up as some kind of a poll because it is pretty far off topic, but we have done a few off topic things here on the channel occasionally.
Well, you can also use your other channel if you feel more comfortable doing it that way too.
Yeah. So it'll depend. Like for instance, did you see the discussion I had with two fairly high level Klingon speakers on the channel?
I saw a bit of it, but not a whole.
Not very much on topic, but it was like, we're getting into linguistics and stuff like that, so it kind of is sort of tangentially related.
I've been interested in learning some Klingon, but you can't really I can't find a whole lot of good resources.
So this is for anyone. So Duolingo has a Klingon course. That's a free app. You can just download that, and then get the Klingon dictionary as the first book that you should get. And there are a few others that you can get if you actually want to keep getting into it. But that's the most important book to get, is the Klingon dictionary, because it contains the core grammar rules that Duolingo will give you an idea of how the grammar works. But if you want a formal description of it that you can reference, you're going to need the Klingon dictionary. It's actually least useful for the word list, because the word list is much, much less than half of the Klingon words now. So don't rely on it for the word list, but you need the grammatical description if you actually want to really get into the language, which is the case for, I mean, any language. If you really, really want to learn it, you're going to have to get something that is going to give you a nice formal description of the grammar. So
I just usually stick with my universal translator.
That does work too.
Usually, yeah, most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And an intrigued feline points out he was a president for only 31 days. Yes. That's why I have no complaints about him, because he didn't do anything particularly terrible because he died too soon. What are you going to complain about?
Just a dead sick the whole time.
Exactly. Look, there's only so much you can screw up the country when you're basically in a coma for your entire presidency.
That is true.
So
that is true.
Yep. 9th president from March 4th to April 4th, 1841. There you go. If only all presidents could cause as little damage.
Oh, well, now you're just asking too much.
Yeah, I'm asking for a lot. But now it's getting dangerously into the political area. So, let's see. So is your TikTok something where you're focusing on a lot of science stuff? Like, what if people go and, I don't know how TikTok works. Do you subscribe to people? I don't even know.
So, like, yeah, at first it was just kind of like, filming stuff that, me and the friends were doing or whatever. Then it got into shit Biden, and then it was turned into like burning a Confederate flag. But now I've completely twisted the channel to a different view. I'm going to focus more on like atheist stuff, being an apostate here in Oklahoma, which is really fun, especially since I know everybody claims to be the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, but Oklahoma is definitely the stain on the shorts of the Bible Belt. It's bad.
Okay. Well, actually, I didn't know. So I don't spend a whole lot of time reading about or being in Oklahoma, so I don't actually know. Like, is it a very strongly like Protestant area, or like what's the deal?
I could not run for public office here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really if you don't go to a church to raise funds here, basically you're not going to have any future in that.
Okay.
In fact, dealing with your job in general, like the rule of like no politics or religion talk at work is more of a benefit for a non-believer than a believer in Oklahoma.
Okay, yeah, because my guess is that they're all pretty far on the religious right then.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, they can't have somebody that believes in nothing around. So you do have to be careful about that whenever you're working in Oklahoma.
Okay. From Jay,
you're not supposed to be able to do it, but
right. Well, one of the things about things like that is, look, it's not that hard to come up with a quote unquote legitimate reason to fire someone whom you want to fire for an illegitimate reason.
Right. Exactly.
You just become a bit of a hard ass, and any little rules and fractions you write them up for, and then after you write them up a few times, oh, guess they're gone now. Oh, I guess he just happened to have been an atheist.
Yeah, so. Well, Oklahoma's right to work, so they can fire you without writing you up.
Oh, there you go.
You can get fired for no reason. Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
So it's definitely a lot more dangerous here. So it's why I usually do jobs that won't compromise that.
Yeah. Actually, so this is a weird one, but in right to work states, it's actually often easier to work for bigger companies because they usually have nationwide HR policies. Which means even if it's a right to work state, your boss is usually not, like your direct supervisor is usually not the one who can fire you. He has to go through HR, and they can come up with like, well, you didn't actually have a valid reason to, you don't have a valid reason to fire this person, so we won't let you because it's our national policy. So it might actually be, in some cases, actually working for big corporations in those states can work out a little bit better.
I hate to tell somebody to go to a major corporation to work, but yeah, you're probably better off with as far as the laws affecting them federally versus state-wise, because like Oklahoma, the labor union participation rates like the lowest in the nation.
Yeah.
So there's you don't really have a whole lot of rights as a worker in Oklahoma. So don't rock the boat unless you can afford to.
We have a question from JS, which is, I don't actually know if I have an answer to this, but it's, am I the only one who thinks that Charles Jackson looks like the American actor John Glover in parentheses, Poison Ivy's crazy botanist boss from the amazing Batman, from the quote unquote amazing Batman and Robin. I don't even know if I can picture either Charles Jackson or John Glover well enough to answer that question.
John Glover. Well, I can tell you. Let's see. It's gonna be. I was checking out those new the new Nas X sneakers that are coming out. They're pretty nice. Said it was John who?
John Glover. So
Yeah, kinda.
Okay.
I mean, eh.
Yeah, I can kind of. All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions for Cameron right now. So unless I get a few more, we're probably going to start doing some wrap-up stuff. But I'll still be open for a few more questions. So, Jackson, is there any... Assuming that we don't get too many more questions, what would you like to tell people as sort of your sort of final thoughts for the day?
Yeah, one thing I would like to say, like, even if you're religious, right? Like, don't ever push younger creationists on kid. Yeah, it's not just you're taking away their ability to have an opinion on a subject, but in the long run could be costing them money. And in my case, it was money I didn't have. I had to get student loans for that. So, yeah, it can be a very expensive venture. And I know, growing up in a religious household, it's important to you that your kids follow in line and all that. And it might seem like an appealing idea to kind of throw that in front of them. So just make sure you've got good reasons and arguments. And if they agree, they agree. If they don't, well,
yeah,
kid's not going to agree.
I actually, so a lot of times, the question can be asked like, how dangerous is young Earth creationism? And on one hand, it's not that dangerous. Like, very few people are gonna like, hurt anyone or refuse vital medical treatment because of young Earth creationism or something, right? But on the other hand, it can cause things like, it can cause people to lose their entire support network and cause them to have to take out excessive student loans that they otherwise wouldn't have had to. It can cause people's careers to collapse. I mean, it is a danger to people, just not in the same way that, like, say, anti-vax is, right? Where, like, people are going to directly die as a result of this. Not so much for young Earth creationism, but that doesn't make it safe. And there is a bit of overlap between young Earth creationists and anti-vaxxers, because once you believe one conspiracy theory, there's a chance that you're going to fall for another one. And we do have a few more questions.
Oh, yeah.
An intrigued feline asks, sorry about that. An intrigued feline asks, it may be answered before. It may have been answered before, but do you have a lot more of a wow feeling in regards to our understanding of the world, life, and the universe, like how amazing it is our world is formed, etc.?
Oh yeah, everything's way cooler now, man. Like it's the fact that nothing has to have a purpose or anything makes it way cooler. Like I'm getting into right now. I'm about to start growing mushrooms like shiitake, portobello, some lion's mane, which is really good for like dementia prevention and stuff like that. And I'm learning all about fungi right now, which I've never really just stopped and learned about.
Fungi are weird, man.
It's so weird, but the vital point that it plays with our evolution as well. I mean, it's of course I definitely sign up for the Stone Age theory. I think there might have been some positive influence there from that. But
we'll have to have you on with Erica, see if we can do, because I'm pretty sure she's not big on that. So we could do like a Cameron versus Erica Stone Date hypothesis.
Hey, I'd be down. I'm always down for some good conversation.
Okay.
But yeah, no, like the wow factor is like going over space time, right? The especially when you watch Interstellar and how they kind of break it down in that, like it makes it way cooler. Thinking that this is just something that is, and it's not like something that somebody just was like, oh well, here it is, boom, you know. It's a lot more special.
TD Lane asks what your favorite mammal is.
Humans.
Humans? Okay. What about besides humans?
No, if I had to pick like a favorite mammal, elephants are pretty cool.
I agree. Elephants are really cool. Yeah, and actually, unfortunately, the African bush elephant, or sometimes forest elephant. It was the forest elephant. Actually, yeah, the African forest elephant was just put on the endangered species list. It was vulnerable. Now it's endangered. So there's been a
Well, aren't certain elephants like growing like with either little or no tusks
Yep.
now because of like the natural pressures that have been being put on by humans?
Yeah, there's strong natural selection against large tusks and in favor of small or absent tusks, and so African elephants, who are generally like until recently were pretty much universally had tusks, both in males and females, are now frequently being born, or much more frequently being born without tusks and without ever developing them.
I would definitely say humans are the most dangerous mammal.
That's probably true in terms of overall impact on other animals, yeah. And certainly humans kill more humans than I think any other species does. Let's see.
Oh, I mean,
JS asks for your favorite shark.
now see, sharks I don't know a lot about. But if I had a favorite, like even if we were to go like prehistoric,
He didn't say modern. He just said shark in general. So yeah, go as
So
prehistoric
would
as you want.
Megalodon count as a shark, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a shark.
Okay, cool. Well, then there you go. Yeah,
Megalodon. Did you watch the Meg?
I watched like the opening, and then I like passed out because we were watching it late at night.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I think that is pretty much it for the questions. So I want to thank you very much, Cameron. I had a lot of fun, and as it's been said in the chat, you have a lot of enthusiasm, and so I think people are going to look forward to hopefully hearing more from you. And yeah, send me the links that you want to add, and I will make sure that links to like your TikTok and if you want people to come find you on Twitter or whatever, will be in there. And you and chat as well. You guys have a wonderful weekend. I think it's the weekend for everyone. I don't think it's pretty sure the entire Earth is currently in weekend mode. So, yes, have a great time, everybody, and I hope you all stay safe. And channel news, I'm just going to give a little bit of that. So, Tuesday is not going to be Kent with Bent. It is going to be a YouTube creationist tier list featuring Gutsick Gibbon, probably also featuring TD Lane, maybe Creation Myths. Basically, you guys know who the crew is. Whichever ones of them can come by and hang out for a little bit. We'll do some creationist tier list for pineapple on pizza, yay or nay? That's one of the questions we have to ask.
No.
Okay.
No. I'm sorry, no.
Fair enough.
No.
Then Thursday, there will be a video out. I don't think it's going to be the next update for the Speculative Evolution project, although that did just recently finish. And after the computer crash I talked about on Twitter, some of you guys might have known, but I had a computer crash that corrupted the files, and I lost about 28 hours worth of work on that video. So I've been trying to recover for quite a while. But that probably won't be this Thursday. But yeah, and then Saturday, so a week from today, I will be doing another Genesis Apologetics marathon stream. So get ready for another 5+ hour stream on a week from today. So there you go. So thank you very much, everybody, and I will hopefully see all of you on Tuesday. I'd like to just take a moment to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above: Ben Tovand, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, and The Venerable Bede. My channel members and patrons help make this a much more stable income, because as you might know, ad income varies wildly from month to month, even with the same number of views. And it really helps this channel stay on the air. But if a monthly pledge, or a yearly pledge, which I have now activated, isn't right for you, there's a merch store linked in the description, and every like, share, and subscription really helps the channel grow. Also, those pledging $10 or above will have access to free 3D art assets, including materials and models, which will be made for Blender by me and can be used in any project without crediting me